Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So I want you to imagine that you were walking through the back lot of a major movie studio.
Oh, okay. Like a Hollywood set.
Yeah, exactly, like a massive Hollywood studio lot. You turn a corner, and suddenly you are standing right in the middle of this stunning, intricately detailed, perfectly authentic-looking 19th century Western town.
Right. Right.
The saloon has those swinging wooden doors.
Oh, yeah?
And the bank looks like it's constructed of this really solid, weathered brick. The sheriff's office even has a heavy iron lock hanging on the doorframe. I mean, it commands your attention.
Sure, it looks amazing on camera.
It looks magnificent. But then you walk up to that saloon, you place your hand flat against that solid-looking wooden wall, and you just give it a little push,
Uh-huh.
and the entire building wobbles.
Right, because there is no actual building there.
Exactly.
It is just a piece of painted plywood, basically, propped up by a couple of 2x4s in the back.
Yeah, it is a complete and utter facade. It is designed to look incredible on camera, but it possesses absolutely no structural integrity whatsoever.
Done.
The moment a real storm rolls in, or when wind picks up off the coast,
Yeah.
that entire town is going to shatter into 1,000 pieces because it was never built to endure.
Right. It was only built to be looked at.
Exactly. It was built for an audience. And as we start today's deep dive, that image of the Hollywood facade is our entry point.
It's a great visual for what we are talking about today.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Mm-hmm.
We are diving into a comprehensive, deeply challenging text on leadership today. But I want to set expectations right up front for you listening. This is not your standard corporate management material.
No, definitely not.
We are not looking at strategies for maximizing quarterly returns. We're not talking about optimizing your inbox or hacking your morning routine.
Right. It's not a productivity seminar.
No, we're exploring a text titled Mentoring Emerging Leaders, which approaches human influence from a profoundly Christian and biblical perspective.
And its core premise, honestly, it completely upends how we usually build things.
It really does. It's almost jarring.
It is, because it forces a massive shift in perspective, especially regarding how we evaluate structures.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we are incredibly accustomed to looking at organizations, whether that is, a tech startup, a community initiative, a local ministry, or even a family unit, and we judge their health by their outward appearance.
Right, the metrics we can see.
Exactly. We look at the crowd size, we look at the momentum, the polished public presentation, and we just assume we are looking at something structurally sound.
Like the brick on the Western set.
Yes. But this source material forces us to walk around to the back of the building and actually examine the supports.
To see the 2x4s.
Right. It argues that the true measure of a leader is not their current visibility. It is not their strategic execution. It is who they are intentionally raising up to replace them.
Wow. That's a staggering premise.
It changes everything.
It basically asks this one incredibly heavy question. Who is becoming more faithful, more capable, and more mature because you intentionally invested in them?
Right.
If you cannot answer that question, the text suggests your leadership might be loud, and it might be very active, but it isn't actually multiplying.
What's fascinating here is how aggressively this text subverts the modern metrics of success.
Oh, completely.
I mean, we live in an ecosystem that is just obsessed with speed, right? With reach, with personal branding.
With holding on to the spotlight for as long as humanly possible.
Exactly. And this text demands the exact opposite. It trades speed for depth, and it trades visibility for legacy.
I want to speak directly to you, the listener, for a second.
Go for it.
You might be listening to this, on your commute or while you're folding laundry, and you might be thinking, well, I'm not a CEO. I don't have a corner office. I'm not the pastor of a massive church.
Right. I'm not a leader with a capital L.
Yeah. But the principles we are going to explore today, these ancient concepts of relational transmission, of shared life, of stewardship, they apply to absolutely anyone who has influence over another human being.
100%.
Whether you are managing a small project team or raising children or navigating a local volunteer group, this framework fundamentally alters how you view your impact on the people around you.
The text is adamant about that. Influence is not restricted to a title. It is a basic reality of human connection.
We're always influencing someone.
Right. We are all influencing someone. The question is whether we are building a structure that lasts or merely propping up a facade.
So, okay, if the ultimate goal is to build something that can actually withstand a storm, why do we see so many incredibly successful organizations or massive ministries and brilliant teams just suddenly collapse overnight?
It happens all the time.
It seems like every single week there's a new documentary on a streaming service about a high-flying organization that completely imploded.
Yeah, and the source text gives a very specific diagnostic term for this exact phenomenon.
What is it?
It calls it brittleness.
Brittleness.
Yeah, and it argues that this structural brittleness is the direct result of what it terms concentrated leadership.
Concentrated leadership. You know, I was thinking about this concept, and it reminds me of the eucalyptus tree.
Oh, really?
Yeah, have you ever read about how eucalyptus trees grow?
I mean, I know they are native to Australia, but tell me more about how they grow.
They are fascinating, but they are also considered an invasive species in a lot of places
Oh, interesting.
because they grow incredibly fast and incredibly tall, so you get this impressive tree very quickly.
Sounds like a successful startup.
Exactly. But they have a dark side. They actually secrete a toxin into the soil that poisons the ground around them.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It means no other plants or trees can take root anywhere nearby.
Wow.
So you get this massive towering tree, but it stands completely alone. And because it doesn't have a deep interconnected root system with an entire forest around it to hold the soil together, its own roots are surprisingly shallow.
Oh, I see where this is going.
It looks like an absolute giant, but when a severe storm hits, a strong gust of wind will knock the entire tree completely over. It's huge, but it's totally brittle.
That is a phenomenal analogy for what the text is diagnosing.
Right.
When you look at an organization experiencing rapid growth, you very often find a eucalyptus tree right at the center.
Just poisoning the soil.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
You see one highly visible, incredibly charismatic, energetic leader, or maybe a very tiny, tight-knit inner circle making all the decisions,
They're doing all the public speaking.
doing all speaking, driving all the vision. They are carrying the entire weight of the ecosystem on their shoulders.
And from the outside, the organization looks towering and strong.
Right. But structurally, because the soil around them has been essentially poisoned by their need to control everything,
Yeah.
no one else is growing.
Which means the entire structure relies on a single point of failure.
Exactly.
If that leader burns out, and let's be honest, carrying that much weight guarantees burnout eventually.
Oh, absolutely.
Or, if they experience a moral failing or if they simply take another job and leave, the whole thing just collapses.
Precisely. The momentum vanishes overnight. Because the people inside that organization were never trained to be active, load-bearing participants.
They were just an audience.
Yes, they were trained to be consumers. The text contrasts this brilliantly with the metaphor of the stage versus the garden.
Let's dive into that. The stage is entirely about performance, right?
Yes. The stage says, watch me.
Okay.
When the lights go down and the spotlight hits the leader, everyone else just sits in the dark and passively consumes the event.
Like going to a movie.
Right. They might applaud, they might leave feeling very inspired by what they saw, but they aren't actually doing any heavy lifting themselves.
But a garden is totally different.
A garden operates on a completely different paradigm. A garden says, come get your hands dirty with me.
I love that.
It requires people to participate. It requires patience, pruning, watering, and honestly, significant time.
So the stage creates a temporary, highly controlled event. But the garden creates a messy, living, resilient ecosystem.
Exactly.
But wait, if the garden ecosystem is so much more resilient, and, we all intuitively know that a forest survives a storm better than a single tree, why is our instinct almost always to build the stage?
That is the million-dollar question.
I mean, there has to be a psychological block here that prevents us from building gardens.
There is a massive psychological block, and the text points directly to our fundamental misunderstanding of ownership.
Ownership.
Yes, this brings us to a radical paradigm shift in the material. The text demands that we stop viewing leadership as a possession and start viewing it as a stewardship.
The psychology of ownership. That makes total sense.
All right.
We naturally think of our influence, our specialized skills, our hard-won wisdom as our personal property.
Yeah, like we bought it.
Exactly. The modern mindset is I put in my 10,000 hours, so I clawed my way up the corporate ladder, I earned this authority, this platform belongs to me.
But the biblical framework completely dismantles that illusion of ownership.
How so?
In the biblical view, a leader doesn't actually own anything.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. Your influence, your experience, your platform, these are not trophies you put on your mantle to prove your worth to the world.
Okay.
They are divine trusts. They are resources loaned to you by God with the specific expectation that you will invest them in other people.
Oh, wow. So we were really talking about the historical concept of a steward.
Exactly. Think about a steward in the ancient world.
Yep.
A steward does not own the estate. They manage the estate for the benefit of the true owner.
Right.
If a steward takes the owner's wealth and locks it in a vault just to make himself feel powerful and secure.
Or if he hoards the resources because he's terrified of someone younger coming in and taking his position.
Exactly. If he does that, he is guilty of malpractice. He is fundamentally misusing someone else's property.
Wow. Applying that to leadership, that is a heavy thought.
It is. A leader who hoards their wisdom, who protects their authority by keeping their team weak, or who refuses to train a successor out of insecurity. They are hoarding a gift they were explicitly supposed to give away.
The source material brings up the biblical parable of the talents here, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
The servant who is so paralyzed by the fear of losing what he was given that he literally buries it in the dirt.
Right. He preserves it perfectly.
Perfectly. But there is zero growth, zero multiplication.
Yeah.
And he is heavily condemned for it in the story.
And the text contrasts that fear with the radical posture of John the Baptist.
Oh, right.
It explicitly highlights his statement. He must increase, but I must decrease.
I mean, try putting that on a LinkedIn profile today.
Right. You wouldn't get many recruiters reaching out.
That is the ultimate anti-personal branding statement. I must decrease.
It is a deliberate, intentional stepping back into the shadows. True Christian mentoring is utilizing your current visibility to shine a light on someone else's emerging capability.
I have to challenge this, though.
Please do.
Because it sounds beautiful and poetic, to talk about decreasing so others can increase.
Sure.
But let's ground this in reality for a second. If a CEO decides they're going to spend 5 years quietly mentoring their staff and intentionally stepping out of the spotlight,
Yeah.
the board of directors will probably fire them by Q3 for a lack of visible, aggressive growth.
That's a very real possibility.
In a hyper-competitive corporate environment, or even, honestly, a competitive nonprofit sector, hoarding specialized knowledge is literal job security.
Right.
Doesn't this text just ignore the harsh reality of modern economic pressures?
That is a very fair pushback. And honestly, the text doesn't shy away from how dangerous this feels.
It addresses it.
It does. It explicitly acknowledges that giving away your influence requires immense moral courage because it goes against every professional survival instinct we have.
Exactly.
But it addresses your challenge by reframing the ultimate goal. Yes, concentrating leadership and driving yourself to the brink will produce a short-term spike in productivity.
Which might appease a board for a few quarters.
Sure, it will look great on a quarterly report. But the text argues that true, lasting leadership is only validated by its capacity to reproduce.
Okay, reproduce.
If your entire division falls apart the day you retire, you weren't actually leading, you were just performing.
You were the eucalyptus tree.
Exactly, you were just a very impressive facade. Furthermore, the text highlights the severe psychological and spiritual cost of hoarding influence.
What's the cost?
When you make yourself indispensable, you isolate yourself on a pedestal. You become surrounded entirely by dependents rather than peers.
Oh, that's dangerous.
It's incredibly dangerous. You have no one who can challenge your ideas safely. That leader becomes spiritually thin, exhausted, and profoundly lonely.
Releasing influence, on the other hand, creates a community of shared strength.
It cures the ego.
Okay, assuming our listener is convinced by this.
Let's hope so.
They want to be a steward. They want to share their influence and not die lonely on a pedestal. How do we actually do this?
Right, the practical application.
Because I think the default assumption is that giving away influence just means delegating tasks.
Oh, totally.
Like here, you take over the weekly reporting spreadsheet. Boom, I'm mentoring you.
Right, check the box.
But the text draws a massive canyon-sized distinction between managing someone and mentoring someone.
It does. And confusing the two is probably one of the most common mistakes leaders make today.
Really?
Yeah. Management and mentoring are two entirely distinct callings. They're both necessary, but they ask completely different questions about the people involved.
Let's replace the tired corporate cliches here for a second to explain this.
Okay, I like it.
Think about a master mechanic fixing a car versus a driving instructor teaching a teenager how to drive.
That's a great analogy.
Right. A mechanic, which represents management, looks at the car and asks, how do we get this machine running as efficiently as possible?
Yes.
The mechanic doesn't care about the car's personal growth, They just need the engine to fire.
They just need the output.
Exactly. But a driving instructor, representing a mentor, puts the student in the driver's seat.
Okay.
The instructor's primary goal isn't just arriving at the grocery store efficiently. If it were, they would just drive the car themselves. It'd be way faster,
And much less stressful.
way less stressful. But the instructor uses the journey to the grocery store to shape a safe, discerning driver.
That perfectly illustrates the text's point. Management looks at a task and asks, how do we complete this efficiently?
Right.
Mentoring looks at the exact same task and asks, who is becoming capable, wise, and faithful through the process of completing this?
Wow. That's a totally different lens.
It completely changes the interaction. When a leader only manages people, they are essentially treating human beings as utilitarian resources.
Just cogs in a machine.
Exactly. They are extracting service based entirely on reliability. If you are good at writing reports, a manager will just keep demanding reports from you until you drop.
Because you're the most efficient way to get that task done?
Right. But a mentor flips the script. A mentor uses the writing of the report as a classroom to form the person's critical thinking.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Management trains someone to complete a process, but mentoring trains someone to discern.
Yes.
But let me ask on behalf of all the project managers out there listening right now.
I'm sure they have thoughts.
Does the text view management as a bad thing, like a necessary evil? Are we supposed to abandon efficiency entirely and just talk about our feelings all day?
Not at all. Not at all. The text actually offers a robust defense of management as a deeply biblical concept.
It does.
It points to several examples, like Moses organizing the logistics for millions of Israelites in the wilderness. You don't move millions of people without intense management.
Oh, for sure. That's a massive logistical nightmare.
Right. It points to Joseph meticulously managing the grain stores during the Egyptian famine, and Nehemiah coordinating the complex, highly structured rebuilding of the wall in Jerusalem.
So management is necessary.
Management brings order out of chaos. It prevents anarchy. The danger arises when management replaces mentoring.
And what happens when it replaces it?
You get the modern burnout epidemic.
Oh, man.
When an organization prioritizes output over human formation, it eventually exhausts the very people who are sustaining the mission.
People feel like cogs in a machine because they're being used up faster than they are being built up.
That is exactly it. Mentoring is the mechanism that replenishes the human soul so that the management structure actually has healthy people to sustain it.
Used up faster than they're being built up. That hits really close to home for a lot of industries right now.
It's everywhere.
So to understand what true building up looks like, the text urges us to look backward at the ancient architecture of multiplication.
Yes, the text is very clear that this kind of relational investment is not some new 21st century organizational strategy.
Right, it's not a new TED Talk.
No, it is the ancient generative pattern of God's work, and it highlights one specific sentence as the ultimate blueprint.
2 Timothy 2, verse 2.
Exactly.
This is where the Apostle Paul is writing from a Roman prison to his young protege, Timothy.
Correct. Paul writes, "And what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also."
There is so much packed into that one line.
The text unpacks the profound layers there. You actually have 4 distinct generations embedded in that single sentence.
Walk us through them.
First, you have Paul. He passes the wisdom to Timothy. That's the second generation.
Right.
Then Timothy is commanded to entrust it to faithful people. That is the third generation.
Okay.
And those faithful people must be equipped to teach others also, the fourth generation. It is an unbroken, living chain of relational transmission.
What really strikes me about that verse is a very specific word Paul chooses to use.
Which one?
He doesn't tell Timothy to entrust the future of the movement to the most charismatic people.
Right.
Or the most talented public speakers. He explicitly says to entrust it to faithful people.
The text makes a fierce argument here that faithfulness must precede responsibility.
Faithfulness over talent.
Always. Faithfulness, which encompasses consistency, teachability, endurance, that is the bedrock. Talent without faithfulness is incredibly destructive.
We see this chain of faithfulness throughout the historical examples in the text, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, Moses didn't just hand Joshua a manual on leadership and say, good luck.
No.
Joshua's preparation was the slow, grueling reality of the wilderness. He watched Moses handle rebellion, lack of resources, deep discouragement.
And Elijah shaped Elisha through years of physical proximity.
But here is the practical problem for the listener right now.
Okay, let's hear it.
Talent is loud.
It is very loud.
It's incredibly obvious when someone is a gifted communicator or a brilliant coder or a natural salesperson. You spot it instantly.
True.
But how do you actually spot faithfulness in someone who might be awkward or totally unpolished or completely inexperienced?
The expert guidance in the text is incredibly practical here.
Oh, good.
It instructs leaders to look for the quiet indicators of character.
Like what?
Look for the person who consistently shows up, even when the task is mundane and there is absolutely no spotlight on them.
The people doing the invisible work.
Right. Look for the person who listens carefully rather than the person who always dominates the meeting to prove how smart they are.
Oh, that's a big one.
And most importantly, look at how they handle correction.
That is the ultimate test, isn't it?
Yeah,
Defensiveness versus teachability.
it really is. A highly talented person who becomes defensive, deflects blame, or pouts at the slightest critique is not ready to lead.
Their ego is just too fragile.
Exactly. Conversely, an unpolished, inexperienced person who absorbs correction, internalizes it, and demonstrably changes their behavior. They are displaying profound faithfulness.
Wow.
The text notes that looking for these quiet traits prevents one of the great tragedies in leadership.
Which is?
Giving a platform to someone whose character has not been formed to sustain the weight of it. When you promote someone solely based on talent, you risk crushing them under the pressure.
That leads perfectly into how the greatest mentor in history, Jesus, actually cultivated this kind of bulletproof character.
Yes.
Because he didn't sit the disciples down in a synagogue with a whiteboard, a syllabus, and a list of 7 leadership principles.
Right. There was no PowerPoint.
No PowerPoint.
Yeah.
He utilized a completely different methodology.
He utilized proximity. And this brings us to the relational core of the source material.
Let's get into this.
True mentoring is relational long before it is procedural. We all know that raw information can just be downloaded, right?
Yeah, I can read a textbook on leadership over the weekend.
Exactly. But wisdom has to be embodied. The text insists that physical relational nearness, actually sharing life together, is a primary means of grace.
Let's dig into Jesus's immersive model,
Hmm.
because it is so radically different from how we typically onboard people into organizations today.
Oh, it's night and day. Jesus didn't schedule a tight 45-minute weekly Zoom check-in with the 12 disciples.
Right.
His model was entirely immersive. He ate meals with them constantly. He traveled dusty, dangerous roads with them. He got into boats with them during terrifying storms.
He was just there,
Yeah.
doing life.
He was there. He mediated their petty arguments about who was the greatest in real time.
Oh, yeah, they argued about that a lot.
They did, and crucially, he allowed them to witness his own unpolished reality.
What do you mean by unpolished reality?
Well, they saw his profound compassion for marginalized people. They saw his visceral anger at religious hypocrisy. They watched him withdraw into isolation to pray when he was physically and emotionally exhausted.
Just say the behind the scenes.
Exactly. This proximity addresses what the text beautifully calls the hidden curriculum.
The hidden curriculum, that is the secret sauce of mentoring, isn't it?
It is. The hidden curriculum consists of all the vital leadership qualities that a lecture simply cannot communicate.
Like what?
It's about tone of voice. It's about timing, knowing exactly when to speak a hard truth and when to stay totally silent.
Right, reading the room.
Yes. It's about your physical posture in a tense meeting. It's about discerning the hidden motives of the people around you. You cannot teach these nuances on a whiteboard.
You just can't.
They have to be observed in real life, in real time, and absorbed through imitation over years.
But I have to push back here,
Go ahead.
because this sounds wonderful for ancient times, wandering around Galilee.
Right.
But it sounds practically impossible today. My listener might be managing a hybrid remote team.
Very common.
They see their direct reports on a screen maybe twice a week, and maybe in person once a quarter for a retreat.
Yeah.
How in the world do you share a hidden curriculum over an internet connection? Are modern digital workers just out of luck when it comes to deep mentoring?
That is the reality of the modern workplace, but the core principle still applies. You just have to intentionally manufacture proximity.
Manufacture it.
Yes. It's not necessarily about physical location anymore. It's about granting access to your process rather than just your polished output.
Oh, that's interesting. Access to the process. What does that actually look like practically?
Well, if you are working remotely, it means inviting a junior team member onto a difficult client call. Not to speak, but just to listen to your tone and pacing.
Oh, just to be a fly on the wall.
Exactly. It means calling them immediately after a tense virtual meeting to debrief why you handled a conflict the way you did, exposing your internal decision-making.
So you're explaining the why, not just the what.
Right. It means screen sharing your messy, unedited drafting process so they see how you struggle through a problem rather than just emailing them the final perfect document.
I love that. You have to invite them into the messy kitchen rather than just serving them the meal.
That's a great way to put it. You are demystifying the work.
And the text gives some incredible historical examples of this kind of relational risk-taking.
It really does.
It highlights the relationship between Barnabas and Saul, who we later know as the Apostle Paul.
Right.
Saul was essentially a former terrorist to the early church. People were legitimately terrified of him, for good reason.
Very good reason.
But Barnabas offered him what the text calls advocacy before prominence.
Advocacy before prominence.
Yeah. Barnabas literally put his own hard-earned reputation on the line, stood physically next to Saul, and said to the leaders, I vouch for this man.
Wow.
You cannot learn that kind of professional courage in a textbook. You have to experience someone doing it for you.
And the text also points to the brilliant example of Aquila and Priscilla.
Oh, I love this story.
They are sitting in a gathering listening to a man named Apollos preach. Now, Apollos is described as highly gifted, incredibly eloquent, and very persuasive.
He's a star.
He's a star, but his theology is incomplete. He doesn't have the full picture. Now, the instinct of a manager might be to stand up and publicly correct the error right there to maintain quality control.
Which would have completely humiliated Apollos in front of everyone.
Oh, it would have destroyed his confidence entirely.
Right.
But Aquila and Priscilla operate as mentors. Instead of a public takedown, they take him aside privately.
They invite him over.
They invite him into their home, share a meal with him, and refine his theology at the dinner table.
That's incredible.
They preserve his dignity while elevating his capability. That kind of relational safety creates an environment for what the text calls safe failure.
Let's expand on safe failure. Because in most corporate environments, failure is punished, not utilized.
Exactly. When you are walking closely with a mentor, you are allowed to make mistakes without it being a career-ending event.
A mentor creates a psychological safety net.
Yes, where a mistake is transformed from an annihilation into a classroom.
Think about Peter denying Jesus.
The ultimate failure.
It was a massive, catastrophic failure of loyalty. But because of the proximity, Jesus didn't just write him off.
No, he didn't.
He used that proximity to restore Peter on the beach, cooking him breakfast and walking him step by step through his restoration.
You simply cannot simulate that kind of deep character-forging grace in a mass broadcast or an employee handbook.
You just can't.
Proximity is deeply inefficient, but it is the only way to forge a leader who won't shatter when real pressure is applied.
We have spent a lot of time analyzing the mentee today, the person receiving all this patient, agonizingly detailed labor.
We have.
And it seems like the entire arrangement is strictly for their benefit. But as we get to the final chapters of the source text, it reveals a massive plot twist about what is actually happening to the mentor during this process.
This might be the most profound insight in the entire source material.
Really?
I think so. We often assume mentoring is a one-way street, right? The strong, fully formed, benevolent leader pours wisdom into the weak, empty vessel of the learner.
That's the cliche, yeah.
But the text reveals that mentoring is actually a profound instrument of divine refinement for the mentor themselves.
It functions like a crucible.
Precisely. The exhausting daily friction of trying to shape another human being inevitably brings all the unresolved, unhealed, and unrefined parts of the mentor's own soul right to the surface.
You just can't hide it.
You cannot hide your flaws when someone is watching you that closely.
The text breaks this down to 5 specific psychological and spiritual areas that the crucible of mentoring exposes.
Yes, let's walk through them.
I think anyone who has ever managed a team or raised a child will instantly recognize these.
Oh, without a doubt.
The first area it exposes is impatience.
Yes, impatience. When you are mentoring someone and you are waiting for them to grasp a concept that you personally mastered a decade ago,
Oh man, that is so hard.
your gut reaction reveals the true state of your heart. It reveals whether you actually love the person sitting in front of you or if you just love the results they can produce to make your life easier.
Ouch.
Right. If you find yourself constantly snapping at them for not being fast enough, your impatience is exposed.
The second area is pride.
Mentoring strips away the polite veneer of pride. It exposes whether you secretly enjoy playing the savior.
Do you love the feeling of being the smartest person in the room?
Exactly. Do you secretly need your mentee to be slightly dependent on your brilliance to feel secure in your own identity?
That's a tough question to ask yourself.
It is. But if you do, the friction of mentoring will expose that vanity very quickly.
That leads right into the third area, which is control.
Right.
And let's translate this into everyday reality, because whether you are managing a stubborn junior developer or parenting a teenager, this is the hardest one.
Control is an illusion that leaders love to maintain.
Oh, we love it.
Mentoring forces you into the painful realization that while you can build the trellis, you absolutely cannot force the vine to grow.
Wow.
You can provide the environment, the wisdom, and the resources, but you cannot override another human being's free will. You cannot control their maturity.
You just have to let go.
Letting go of that illusion of control and accepting your limits is a deeply sanctifying, humbling process for the mentor.
The fourth area it exposes is vagueness.
When you are leading from a stage or writing a mass email, you can hide behind inspiring, vague generalities.
You can say things like, we need to pursue excellence.
Right. But when a mentee sits across from a desk and says, okay, but how exactly do I handle this specific, highly toxic conflict with my coworker in accounting?
You cannot hide behind buzzwords anymore.
No. Mentoring forces the mentor to speak with uncomfortable clarity. It tests whether you actually understand the principles you preach well enough to apply them to messy, granular reality.
And the fifth area, which strikes me as the ultimate test of leadership, is insecurity.
Yes. Mentoring provides a brutally honest test of a leader's internal security.
How so?
It tests whether the mentor can genuinely, truly rejoice when the person they trained eventually surpasses them.
Oh, wow.
What happens when your student gets the promotion you wanted? What happens when they become more visible, more requested, or more influential than you?
Can you celebrate their ascent, or do you feel threatened and betrayed?
The text provides a deeply relatable scenario here, actually.
What's a scenario?
It describes a seasoned, older leader dealing with an eager but constantly questioning young minister. The older mentor starts feeling this intense daily irritation by the constant pushback. But instead of just snapping at the young kid and pulling rank, the mentor withdraws to reflect and pray.
Taking a step back.
Right. And through that process of self-examination, the mentor realizes that their intense frustration isn't actually about the young minister's immaturity.
What is it about?
It's about the mentor's own fear of losing control over the direction of the project.
Mentoring is essentially a psychological stress test.
It is.
You think you are a patient, humble, secure person right up until you have to answer the exact same question for the fifth time.
Or watch a trainee make a mistake you explicitly warned them to avoid.
Which begs the question, if mentoring is this exhausting and this personally exposing, how do you keep doing it year after year without burning out?
Well, the text points to two sustaining forces that keep a mentor going.
Okay.
The first it calls intercessory prayer. Now, to translate that into universal psychological terms, it means reaching the absolute end of your own self-reliance.
Admitting you can't do it alone.
Exactly. It is the moment you realize you cannot change a human heart by your own sheer willpower or brilliance. It forces you to surrender the illusion of control and seek outside help, acknowledging that true transformation is a work of grace, not just good management.
You totally surrender the outcome.
Yeah.
And what is the second force?
The second is what the text beautifully names the joy of reciprocal grace.
Reciprocal grace.
Yes, this is the profound, entirely selfless delight of seeing someone else flourish because of your investment.
That sounds amazing.
When you finally see that young leader handle a massive crisis with the exact wisdom, patience, and grace you spent 5 years trying to instill in them, it completely cures your ego.
Wow.
You realize that participating in the miraculous growth of a human soul is vastly more fulfilling than just getting another bullet point on your resume. That deep, reciprocal joy is the fuel that sustains a lifetime of pouring into others.
What a profound journey. Let's synthesize what we've explored today.
Sounds good.
We started by pushing against the Hollywood facade, the brittle danger of concentrated leadership.
The eucalyptus tree.
Right, the tree that relies entirely on a single star to hold up the whole show while poisoning the soil around it.
And then we moved through the necessary paradigm shift.
Seeing our influence not as a possession to be hoarded for job security, it is a divine stewardship to be invested.
Exactly. We explored the messy relational trenches of Jesus's discipleship model.
Trading the cold efficiency of management for the deep, character-forging proximity of true mentoring.
Right. And finally, we looked into the crucible that mentoring creates. exposing our pride and refining our patience.
If I could speak directly to you, the listener, as we wrap up,
Go ahead.
it genuinely does not matter if you are leading a massive corporation, serving in a local volunteer group, or guiding your family around the dinner table tonight.
Not at all.
The true, lasting metric of your success is not your personal output. It is not your visibility or how indispensable you made yourself.
It is the faithfulness, the resilience, and the maturity of the people you leave behind.
You are not called to be a container that hoards wisdom. You are called to be a conduit through which grace, experience, and opportunity flow into the next generation.
A conduit, not a container.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your week.
Okay.
The text asks that piercing question. Who's becoming more faithful because you have invested in them? But let's make it even more practical.
Let's do it.
Think about the spaces in your life right now where you currently hold the most power, the most specialized knowledge, or the most influence.
Keep going.
What is one specific thing, a responsibility, a piece of insider knowledge, an opportunity to lead a meeting that you can intentionally give away this week?
Oh, that's good.
And here's the catch. Do not give it away just to lighten your own workload.
Right. Don't just dump a task on someone.
No. Give it away deliberately to force someone else to stretch, to fail safely, and to grow. Take a risk on someone the way Barnabas took a risk on Saul.
Because building a garden is the only way the structure actually endures the storm.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking for that hidden curriculum in your daily relationships. Keep getting your hands dirty in the garden, and we will see you next time.